So a very warm welcome to everyone who's attending this evening, whether you're a member or a supporter of Christian Engineers in Development, or maybe you've had no prior connection with CED and heard about this through your brother-in-law or some other way. Perhaps you've got a connection with Philip. Whatever the case, you're all very welcome. My name's Mike Beresford. I'm one of the directors for CED, and this is the fourth of our Tech Talks. And just to remind everybody that the purpose of these talks is twofold. Firstly, we want to increase our own level of understanding about development. And secondly, we wish to share the knowledge that we might have with others in our field of work. So I'm going to introduce Philip in a moment, briefly, before we watch his presentation. We pre-recorded it because of the vagaries. We didn't want Philip to be halfway through his talk and then find we lost him for the next half an hour. So we pre-recorded his talk, and hopefully we shouldn't have any problems with my internet connection. We may also choose to ask everybody to turn their cameras off, particularly if Philip's struggling with his internet connection. We may find that would be better for him, but I'll do that through the chat if need be. So Philip is CED's only employee. Can you put your camera on, please, Philip? If it will work. So hopefully, perhaps I can spotlight Philip while I'll spotlight him for everyone. So Philip is our only, I'm going to sort of big you up now, Philip. Philip is CED's only employee who works on, if I said a very part-time basis, that's not meant to be derogatory, Philip, but you work just a few days a month for CED on projects in Uganda. And back in 2008, if you remember that far back, Philip was studying for his master's degree at Cranfield University, and I was on the same course as him. Sadly, I was a part-time student. I was only there for a few weeks while Philip was there. But it was a great privilege to study together with Philip. And every time I've gone to Uganda, Philip has been my companion and guide. He's learned what I like to eat. He's learned where I like to go to eat, and the hotels we like and don't like. We've shared some laughs together over the years. It's a real privilege to have you with us tonight to hear what you have to say. And as I say, we've pre-recorded it. I don't know whether you want to say anything now, Philip, or wait until after the presentation and then we can ask you the questions.
Yeah, I think I could wait until after the presentation. Okay,
all right, we'll do that. I'm going to stop spotlighting you because there's nothing worse than being spotlighted, but you're probably going to stay up there now until I get the video on. So I'm now going to show the video. It's about 40 or so minutes long, and then we've got the opportunity, again, use the chat to ask questions or wait until the end. Just jot down the questions you might have. I'm going to share my screen now. Sorry, I've got some people waiting to be let in. That'll teach them to be late. Apologies to those just joining. I said that'll teach you to be late. Sorry, I missed the fact that you were joining. Right, share screen, share computer sound. Hopefully that's going to come up now. Now, the sound isn't great on this, so you're going to have to make sure all background noises are quietened down so you can hear okay.
Good evening, members. My name is Philip Tibenderana from Uganda, and I'm very privileged to be part of the CED Tech Talks, and especially to present to you a Ugandan perspective on development. I'm a CED part-time representative of Uganda. Now, a little bit about myself. I'm Ugandan by nationality, I first did a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering at Makerere University in Uganda, and then a Master of Science in Water Management at Cranfield University in the UK. So I've had 16 years of experience in rural water supply and sanitation in a developing country context. Actually, for all the 16 years, I've worked here in Uganda, and I've been with CED since 2008. That's probably about 12 years ago. Now, it looks a little bit of a long presentation, but I felt like maybe I need to just give a brief introduction of Uganda as a country so that we understand it better. Then also just talk about development, sharing a few concepts on development, just to provide a background on the development situation in Uganda. And just so that you can understand it better, I thought I would make a comparison between the UK and Uganda, because the UK is classified as a developed country, while Uganda is classified as a developing country. So the comparison will help us to know exactly what we are talking about. And then I would also talk about Uganda's development agenda. What are we focusing on as a country? How do we look at development? Where do we want to be within the next 10 or 20 years? Then that will give us kind of like a background to understand how CED has been engaged in Uganda's development. So I know maybe CED has been described in the previous talks, but I'll just in one slide briefly talk about CED. And then more specifically, I'll talk about the CED's engagement in Uganda. What has CED been doing in Uganda, and since when did it start? Then how do we do things here in Uganda? What is our approach? Okay, so I'm looking at our approach as CED to development. Then very briefly, we shall look at a few results that have come out of that engagement. But then, of course, we know it doesn't go without challenges. So we shall also share some challenges about this engagement. So Uganda is a landlocked country in East Africa, as we can see it there on the map. That's where it's located. And it's bordered by Kenya in the east, South Sudan in the north, the DRC, or the Democratic Republic of Congo, in the west, and then Rwanda in the southwest, and Tanzania in the south. Now, Uganda shares the Lake Victoria with Kenya and Tanzania. It's quite a small country, but with quite a big population of over 45 million people currently. Now, interestingly, it is the 25th poorest country in the world in comparison to about 195 countries. So we shall look at some of those details a bit later and how this classification comes about. So I thought that maybe I would just briefly talk about development to provide, like I said earlier, a background on the situation in Uganda. Development is a process that creates growth, progress, positive change, or additional physical, economic, environmental, social, and demographic components. Okay, or it can also be defined as any improvement in the standard of living of people within a specific country. So when we are talking about development here, we are looking at the standard of living currently, and we're looking at Uganda now, and then how can we actually improve that standard of living of people in the country. So we shall look at the standards of living in the country using the different indicators that have been developed for development. But just before we do that, maybe we'll first understand which are these indicators that are used for development and which we are going to use within our definition. So there are a number of them, and I picked out just a few. The first one is the gross domestic product, or what's commonly known as the GDP. And this is how much money a country makes, okay, from its products over the course of the year. Okay, so this is really calculated as from revenues of a particular country over a certain year. And then the gross national product is another indicator, the GNP, which is the money that a country makes from its products, but also including any money that is earned by investment abroad. Now, the other indicator is the GNP per capita, okay? So when we look at the amount of money the country is earning, it's probably also important to put into consideration the population of the country. So you divide this by the population of the country, and then it gives you the GNP per capita. Then another important indicator that we shall look at is the birth rate, okay? How many people are born per 1,000 live births? Okay, now how many people die actually per 1,000 live births? So it's also kind of like looking at the quality of the healthcare system. Out of 1,000 live births, how many babies actually survive? So the other one is the Human Development Index, or the HDI. Now this is quite complex because it takes into consideration issues of life expectancy, education levels, per capita income, okay? And these ones are used to rank countries into 4 different tiers of human development. So we shall also look at the HDI in comparison of the 2 countries. Then the other one is the infant mortality rate, which is the number of infants dying before they reach 1 year of age. So again, this is looking at the healthcare system and how good it is. Okay, so out of 1,000 live births within a given year, how many of those that are born actually reach 1 year of age? Then of course the literacy rate, and that's really about people who are able to read or write. And then the life expectancy, about how long an average person lives. And again, this one is really dependent mainly on the healthcare system. It's dependent on the diet. It's dependent on the per capita income and many other factors that actually make someone's life complete. So within our comparison, we are looking at the UK versus Uganda. And like I said earlier, this is a developed country versus a developing country. So when, for example, we look at the GDP for the UK, it is 2.8 trillion US dollars. So it's converted into dollars just to give a picture. While for Uganda, it is 35 billion US dollars. Now that's about, you know, an 80th, I would say. So in simple words, you can actually say the UK is 80 times more developed than Uganda. Okay, I think that's probably gives us a rough picture already. The GNP, or gross national product, 3.2 trillion for the UK against 98.9 billion in Uganda. Okay, then we have the GNP per capita that you can also see there. Now, another interesting one is the birth rate. Now, this is actually the number of children that are born per woman. Okay, very interesting there. 1.6 births per woman for the UK versus 4.96 births per woman in Uganda. Now, it's quite interesting why a developing country would have a higher birth rate than a developed country. But again, it's attributed probably to the fact that within the developing country, the literacy levels are lower. So probably people do not understand aspects of birth control and family planning. And then some people believe that it's because people in developing countries are more redundant, they are not busy, so they don't have things to really keep them busy. And that's why the birth rate continues to grow. So the Human Development Index is another indicator which we are comparing 0.9 for the UK against 0.5 for Uganda. That's quite the difference there as well. Infant mortality rate. Now this is interesting because it actually looks at how well, like I said earlier, the health system, how good the health system actually is, and therefore how many children survive within the first 1 year of their birth. And we see that with the UK, it's just 3.8 against 33 deaths per 1,000 live births in Uganda. Then the literacy rate there, you can all see 99% of people in the UK can actually read, whereas only 76% within Uganda can read. And of course, this affects a lot of the development aspects, as we shall see in the following slides. And then, of course, the last one here we're looking at is the life expectancy, which is 81 years in the UK, a very high number, against 63 years in Uganda. This life expectancy has actually gone up over the last few years. It was probably about 41, I remember 5 years ago, but it has gone up now, which is probably kind of like an indicator that we are on the path of development. Now, so what is the position of Uganda in terms of development is concerned? There's a Vision 2040, which was developed 10 years ago. That one was looking at transforming Uganda from a predominantly peasant and low-income country to a competitive upper middle-income country. Now, within that vision, there are 5 areas which are prioritized. Of course, the first one is agriculture. As you all know, Uganda's economy is very dependent on agriculture and actually rain-fed subsistence agriculture. So within the aspect of agriculture, we are looking at how can we better boost the production from agriculture, starting irrigation, can we have water for production, and these are some of the areas actually that CED is involved in, the other area is tourism, and then minerals, oil and gas, then infrastructure development, and then human capital development. So that is what we are looking at within the next 20 years. Some progress has been made, of course, but we still have a long way to go, as we shall see. So I'll flip in a little bit and talk about Christian engineers in development. But like I said earlier, this has probably been covered in the previous tech talks. But for the sake of those who are joining us for the first time, CED, as it's commonly known, is a group of professional engineers who volunteer their skills and resources. Now, these are people who are based in the UK, but they have given up their time, their resources, and their skills to come and give a hand, So they give a hand to people in the developing countries and support them in many ways for example, in carrying out feasibility studies for projects, in assisting project proposal writing, in making designs of different projects, contract documents, procurement, tender evaluation. Okay, they even go ahead and do project and support project supervision. But then interestingly enough, there's the on-job training of local staff, because we believe that when you leave the skill within the country, then it can actually be used to further the development and even especially for operation and maintenance. So CED is not a funding agency, but acts like a bridge between a developing country organization and a funding agency. So on the right, that is a design of a valley tank in one of the communities in Rentamo, which was done by one of the CED directors. And you can see how well it has been developed. And that has come as a result of a lot of work and involvement and participation, a number of visits to the country, Uganda, interviews with beneficiaries, walking around the catchments to try and find, how big a catchment is, visiting the map offices, okay, picking up maps. You find some are not actually there. I mean, those are some of the challenges of development. There's a time I remember we were looking for maps. Probably it could be for this same community, but someone said it was easier to get the maps from the UK than to actually get them from Uganda, which I think at some point we actually did. So that is what CED members are actually doing, and they devote a lot of their time to do this kind of work. So CED has been engaged in Uganda since 1994, and mainly increasing access to safe water and sanitation, okay, a number of things that they've been doing and different support that is being provided to the country. But like the first one, under water and sanitation, is construction of low-cost piped water supply systems. Now, these systems are low-cost because there are no aspects of pumping, for example, involved. So water is tapped from a spring further uphill from the community and then distributed by gravity through a pipeline network. So the involvement of CED here is that they support the development of the designs, they visit the communities, they support the surveys, okay? It's actually usually done with the CED members. Then the designs are developed, and then the costings are done. But then interestingly enough also, they support the proposal development. So when it comes to looking for funding, they can actually support the developing partner to write funding proposals to agencies. And then also they help with the fund management. So another aspect under water and sanitation is that they have trained women and supported them to construct 4,000 liter tanks at their households. Now this is done mainly because women, because you'll ask probably why they train women, it's because women are the actual load bearers. They are the ones who carry the water, so they know how difficult this activity is. So when they are trained, they have the skill, and then they build the tanks for themselves, but then also later, they continue to build tanks for their neighbors and their friends and other people who may want the tanks to be constructed for them at a cost. So effectively, this also helps to improve their standards of living because it increases their income. So it is two ways. You have the water, and then you have a skill which you can use to raise income. So the little boy there on the right is actually collecting water from one of the tap stands, as it's called. It's a community tap that is used by between 15 to 20 households, ensuring that they don't walk more than 500 meters. Now, the measure of access here in Uganda is a water supply that is within 500 meters of walking distance, which is still great, especially as you can see in the background, there's hills and valleys. So it may actually be 500 meters down the hill. So this person still has to carry the water up the hill, which is a big burden. Now, so these are some of the pictures from a water supply system. On the left is the intake works, which we commonly call a collection box, where the water from the spring actually gets into the system. And then in the middle, that's a 45 meter cubed reservoir tank, which has been constructed with concrete blocks, as you can see, and that's the completed tank on the right. Now, this was from the Kisiaka, Ghana, one of the gravity flow schemes that was supported by CED here in Uganda. So another of the projects that CED is currently constructing the commonly called Chakokyum Valley tanks. 6,000 meters cubed of water, that's about 6 million liters of water. And these provide water to people, especially in the drier corridor. That's kind of in the middle-ish of the country, and also to their livestock. Now, that is a newly constructed tank. The water looks dirty there, but after some time, the vegetation grows over the bands, as you can see the bands there, and then the water actually clears out and becomes clean enough. So for livestock, for washing and other domestic work, the water can be used as it is, but then for drinking, we encourage them to boil it. But it has created a lot of difference in the lives of people, because most people in these communities have been walking for over 5 kilometers looking for water just to use in their homes, and also walking with their livestock for that long distance to the nearest water source. So these projects have actually come in very handy and have changed the lives of people a lot. Now, so the other thing that we are doing with CED is supporting development and also maintenance of small hydropower plants. Now, this I think was covered in the previous CED Tech Talk, but just to really talk about what CED is doing, feasibility designs, feasibility studies and designs, and then also assessing performances of such systems and recommending improvements. Now, that was flow measurements, I think, being done on the Rubago proposed hydropower project. Then we also carry out technical support to various infrastructure developments. For example, this is one of the buildings in a hospital. It's a Church of Uganda founded hospital in Kuluva, that is in the northwest of Uganda. So it's in a not a very good state. And following a visit from one of the CED members to the hospital, they actually requested CED to support them to conduct a construction audit. So that's being done right now, and I think maybe the report for that is almost ready. But in this case, you could see that the infrastructure, some of it was completely dilapidated. Some is just acceptable. They have roofing, leaking roofs. And so what CED would do in that case is to help to carry out that audit, then make recommendations, either for rehabilitations or complete replacement, and then also help with the designs that go along with that. So they will not only look at the infrastructure in isolation, we will also look at the power supply, and again, the project on the Kuluba Hospital mini hydropower has already been mentioned. In response to that, we're also looking at the water supply, and then also the wastewater discharge. So when that is all completed, then a report is compiled and then submitted back to the partner, who then decides on the next course of action. So how does CED do things? Now, over the years, we have realized that community participation is very important to instill ownership, and then which will bring long-term sustainability. So the beneficiary communities are involved right from the beginning. So it actually uses a demand-driven approach. So CED does not go out to people with projects, but it responds to requests that are made. Now, the requests are usually made through the local partners. So in this case, the local partner is the Church of Uganda Planning, Development, and Rehabilitation Department. And like I said earlier, the partnership has gone on since 1994. So different areas within the country have local planning and development and rehabilitation offices. So they can as well bring their requests to those offices, and then the requests are submitted to the Church of Uganda Provincial Secretariat in Namirembe in Kampala. Now then those are actually shared with CED. So depending on what the needs are, then CED facilitates feasibility studies, which are done by the CED members. And it's usually done, I think mainly basing on availability and then expertise. So depending on the particular need of the community, then the CED would decide on who takes on which projects. And then that would lead into designing of appropriate technologies that will be used to address the community needs. So that is the kind of approach that it follows. But another aspect that they look at is community mapping. So as you involve the community, you want the community to understand themselves better. So how do you do that? You facilitate them to develop a community map, which is usually a visual representation of the community itself. So they identify the assets within the community, the resources that are available, the different infrastructures. The map on the right may not be very clear, but that is a community map of one of the communities. So you show where the churches are, if there are any springs that exist, okay? Then the boundaries, the roads, health centers. The hospitals here are found in big towns. So for these communities, the best that you would find is maybe a small health center. Okay, so like for example, this one was looking at the water and sanitation situation in a certain community. So now from this map, then the community actually sit down again and then identify where the source of the water is. So they'll actually tell you that this valley is where the source of the water is. And then this is the area that want to be covered. So they also show the households within the map. Then they can also use the same map to map where they actually want the water collection points or the tap stands to be located. Now we give them a criteria and we guide them, and we say a tap stand should supply, say, 15 households, not beyond that. And then the maximum walking distance should be 500 meters. So they sit down as a community and then decide and make a list of the households, and they name them by household name. So for example, Philip, that would be house number 1. Maybe John would be house number 2, maybe Mike. So they have a list of the 15 households and they say this is tap number 1. Now, after that, they locate them within the map. So when now the survey, the topological survey is being done by CED, we ensure that we try as much as possible to follow what the community has already guided, because they would say we prefer to have the tap stand in this place. And when you let the community do it that way, then they actually have the sense of ownership. So they feel this is now our facility, and because we decided on where to put it, then this is where it is going to be. But when you come in and say, according to my technical expertise, I think the tap stand should be here, the tank should be here, then you build the tap stand and no one will actually come to it. So it will just be like a white elephant. So community involvement and mapping is key in the approaches of CED. And now the other one also is on community contribution. So the communities are expected to contribute all the locally available materials. Now, when you quantify their contribution, in a typical project, it may be, say, can probably go to about 25%. So what do they contribute here, for example? Now, in a water supply system, you find that you have, you need pipes, you need cement for building the structures, you need reinforcements, okay? You need sand, you need stones, you need aggregates. So the communities would be expected to contribute to the locally available materials. Now that would be the aggregates, like the lady there in the picture is creating aggregates from stones, and then they will be expected to provide the sand. They'll be expected to provide the poles, which are mainly used for scaffolding. And then they would also be expected to provide the unskilled labor. Now, unskilled labor here, mainly with mixing of concrete, for example, carrying materials to places where the vehicle cannot reach, because many places here you wouldn't have a good road network, or it's hilly, so the road would normally stop here, and then you have to walk another maybe 2-3 kilometers to where the actual project sites are. So the community members actually carry all these materials and deliver them to sites. They would also be expected to accommodate the field staff. So whereas CED would help to prepare the technical staff, the community, the beneficiary community, would be expected to accommodate and feed these staff that they've provided. So it is also a big contribution on their side. Okay, so what are some of the results we have seen out of this? Of course, community ownership and sustainability. There are some water systems which were constructed over 15 years ago, and they're still functioning using the community-based management system. So what kind of system is this? The community itself sits down and chooses leaders amongst themselves. So the leaders make a committee, and they are responsible for making sure that the project is accomplished within the agreed time. So they are like the gatekeepers within the community. So they are the people who get the communities organized. If there's any work to do, then the leaders pass around the information, will go around telling people, or make a rota for communities to work. So sometimes they agree that they work in villages, maybe village 1 will work today, village 2 tomorrow. So whatever system they come up with, it's coordinated by that community-based management system. The committee also is responsible for fund management, especially when it comes to operation and maintenance. they collect funds from all the users, keep proper record of it. They usually have a bank account. They encourage actually to open a bank account where they save the money. So in case there's a breakage, then they would be able to buy the spare parts that are required. Now, while the construction is going on, then CED trains artisans who are going to maintain the system. So they work together with the trained personnel for the whole period of the project. For example, in a water supply system, gravity fed, they work right from source protection to when the tap stands are complete. So these artisans at the end of the day are able to carry out any repairs that the community may need. And then it is the responsibility of the committee to make sure that the funds which are collected for operational maintenance, some of them are used to pay these trained artisans. So again, they ensure that there are regular meetings. Usually they would have annual general meetings for the whole community, but then they would have monthly committee meetings where they discuss the issues that concern their system. Now, the tariff that is collected usually is agreed upon amicably by the whole community. So they would work out the operational and maintenance requirements of their system. If, for example, it's a valley tank, what do you need to keep it running? How much do you need to replace the parts of the hand pump? Or for example, what do we need to keep the grass cut short? What do we need to, keep the fence well trimmed? So they either agree and then raise and then divide up the amount of money that is required between the beneficiary households. And of course, it is their role to ensure that this money is raised and used for the right purpose. And then in the annual general meeting, they are supposed to account to the community. So the skills that have been provided in other projects, I think I said this earlier, to build rainwater harvesting facilities. Now at least the skill is with the communities, and then the communities will use this skill either to increase the coverage by constructing more tanks or by building tanks for themselves as well. So those are just some of the few results. I've focused mainly on the water supply and sanitation part. Of course, there are some challenges that we face along the way. Now, like we saw from previous slides, the poverty levels are high. Now, what does this mean? So when it comes to community contributions, especially for operational maintenance, then you find that some people actually are not able to raise the funds that are required. Now, you find that within the system, you need funds for operational maintenance, but then you also need funds to meet the capital cost of the system, or what maybe you may call the capital maintenance expenditure. But you'll find that when you try to break this down, then the community members are not able to meet these costs. Again, you find that there are some what we may classify as local materials, which are not local in that particular community. For example, sand. Sand is not found everywhere. So if it is only available within a distance, then it becomes difficult for this community to purchase the sand and then transport it to where it is required. Then when we go to sanitation and hygiene, which I have not talked so much about, but within every project that CED is doing, the sanitation and hygiene component is encompassed there. So the households which are benefiting from this water supply are encouraged, for example, to install what we call sanitary platforms that are used as a means of ensuring that excreta is safely disposed. Now, the sanitary platforms are good because they are easy to clean, and then they have a cover, so you can cover them. which actually keeps away the flies and keeps them from, carrying around the disease-causing organisms. So those have been promoted in all the communities where CED has worked. People are encouraged to build the latrines which are safe, which are private. Okay, so there are some of the aspects. And then also the aspect of hand washing after latrine use is very much emphasized. So the change in the hygiene behaviors takes quite some time. And this is mainly because we have cultural issues, norms that surround issues of sanitation and hygiene. So it's a process that usually takes quite a bit of time. And you find that most of the projects that CED is running have a duration of maybe 1 year or 2 years. So you find that within that time, all the practices have not been adopted, but at least the communities have all been taught and there are some changes which have been realized. So now development as a whole cannot be achieved in only one aspect. It has to be holistic. So whereas, for example, we are aiming to improving the lives of the people by providing them with safe water and sanitation, you'll find that there's another aspect which comes in to bring down the efforts. For example, there's not enough good medical health care. So when people fall ill, then they have to move for a long distance to look for the nearest health facility, and then it becomes expensive for them. So they spend the money that they have. They cannot meet the O&M costs. Now, when they don't meet the O&M costs, the system breaks down. It cannot be repaired, and then it dies. So some of these come in and really affect each other. And of course, you realize that you may not be able to do everything, but CED tries as much as possible also to create linkages to other service providers and agencies, interesting other agencies who can actually come in and deal with other issues. But many times they've also taken on some aspects. I remember in one of the communities, there are some CED members who were working on a project, and they met a family of malnourished children. I think there were 3 very malnourished children, but they got out of their way and took these children to, it was the nearest hospital then, so they were attended to, and then this family continued to keep in touch with them and actually even came back to see these people. So the children, actually when you see them now, you cannot believe that, they were in such a situation. So those things come up along the way, and as CED does its work, it tries as much as possible to address, many issues within the community as they come up. Okay, so thank you very much. That was it for now, and probably maybe we shall receive some questions and comments, or some aspects that we feel are going to make even our work better. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Philip. That seemed to work well, and it's lovely to see that you're still there as well. I think, is there anything, first of all, you want to add, Philip, or do you just want to wait for people's questions?
Yeah, maybe just to thank members who are listening in. I can see there a big number. Some are familiar, and it's good to see new people also and get to know them. But I'm looking forward to receiving some comments and contributions, especially when it comes to the approaches that we're using, so that we can see how to make our work even better.
So just either use the chat function or unmute yourself and ask your questions. If 2 of you ask at the same time, by all means, offer it to the other person to allow them to ask the question first. But don't be shy. We've got about half an hour before we let Philip go to rest.
Hi, Philip. Have I got my microphone on?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Brill. Philip, you know the picture of the hospital that wasn't completed yet, part of the hospital? The one that had the corrugated roof?
Yeah.
And you were going to get it sorted out later on?
Yeah.
I've noticed this about a lot of African countries, especially when I've been to South Africa. They don't have gutters for rainwater collection. And yet that hospital had a tide mark about 2 foot high all the way along the wall with plants growing in it. Is guttering not a standard thing in Uganda?
So, can I answer, Mike, or?
Yes, yeah, go ahead. Yes, yep.
Yeah, whereas it's a practice that is sometimes promoted, it's not actually standard. It's not a standard requirement on most buildings. So it's very interesting that you'll find many buildings not guttered, and yet most institutions are struggling with water bills from the national utility. Actually, part of the report in that construction audit that we did spelled out that they had a borehole that the hospital was using, but it broke down because it's very old. And now they were running off the national water supply, now which had been cut off 3 months ago. So they were struggling despite having a lot of roofs where they can fetch their rainwater. So it's not really a practice that people are taking on. And sometimes I think that's why we've come in to try and promote it. Of course, sometimes it's related to the cost, not the cost of the gutters, but the cost of the tanks themselves. So that's why
The
it's
cost of the what?
Of the tanks, of the reservoirs themselves.
Okay.
So after guttering, then you have to store the water in a reservoir.
Yeah. Do you have IBCs in Uganda?
IBCs? What would that be?
It's called an intermediary bulk container, an IBC, or sometimes it's called a tote.
They're like a cubic meter tank
is that?
that's designed to be sort of
corrugated ones, plastic ones.
Yeah, basically, yeah, it's a plastic tank in a metal cage, and it's 1,000 liters. And they're used for sort of transporting liquids all over the world, syrup and juices and all sorts of sort of liquids. And they have two types, one which is plain white and another one which is black. And in this country, you can pick them up for about 30, 40 quid. And they're 1,000 liters and they're great for storage of water.
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder whether you can actually get them in Uganda, because
you can get the plastic ones. It can go as big as 24,000 liters, but that would be quite expensive because at 24,000 liters would go for about 12 million Ugandan shillings. That's about 3,000 pounds, I guess.
See that's
pounds.
Yeah, that's the difference. You see, these you can pick them up for like 30 quid in this country, 40 quid.
Philip, Eric's referring to, it's like a design of a tank that's can be moved with a forklift truck, and they can be stacked with sort of numbers on top of each other. But I don't think they're readily available in Uganda, possibly just in the cities in processing plants. But I'm not sure that you've seen many of them, Philip, or correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, they're not very common here, especially in the rural parts of the country.
Yeah, because in Bulgaria they use them for water storage, methane gas digesters, all sorts of things which are linked together.
Yeah. in a kind of a square kind of
yes, a square, a cube with a metal cage and a
metal
forklift
cage, yeah, and
slots
a white.
underneath.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
They
we've
even-
seen those, yeah, in Kampala at least.
Yeah, they even use them for things like fish farming, aquaponics,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Mm.
Maybe you should do some research, because they're quite a good thing to get if you can get hold of them.
Another area of research that CED has been working on is sort of low-cost rainwater jars, typically either cement jars or ferrocement jars, and but even those are relatively expensive. And compared to the actual plastic tanks that are readily available, and most houses in Uganda that have a tank go for a sort of raised plastic tank. I wonder if we can get to some of these other questions. Alan, can I ask you to ask, sorry, Eric, can I ask you to ask your question? I couldn't quite get what exactly what you were meaning there, so I'm going to ask you to ask it, if that's all right.
There we are. Yes, Philip, thank you for your explanations. We've often been wondering with any of your communities who have benefited from water and sanitation, what might be the next aspect of development? Because you've talked about your development aims for the nation. What sort of development could it be? Transport, local transport? Could it be roads? Could it be solar or power? Could it be aspects of agriculture? What do people need next?
I think it's everything, because again, so depending on the community, when you go in for the assessment, you find that there are different needs and the communities are affected differently. But of course, I think the education system, especially with the infrastructure at schools, then we also have the healthcare system that is struggling a lot. When you look at the network of health centers, it's quite miserable. And you'll find that the health centers do not actually even have drugs. So whereas people would actually move there, they cannot find their drugs. So they would usually, you know, the health is not really good. And of course it affects their productivity, because they really depend on their energy to do the work. And then also now with agriculture. So when you provide the water, then you want to provide skills for agriculture so that you can improve the food production, so that people now have enough food to eat, and then even some surplus to sell. So when you talk about now sale of the food, then the road network is so terrible that you probably need also to improve the road network. So I think they are all connected, and it's probably everything. And then of course, most children in the schools cannot do their work at night. So probably also maybe solar power can be an option. Of course, the mini hydropowers are also being explored, but also solar power, smaller units at households could also be one of the other options. So I think there are many.
On the solar power, we have small units which are available, for example, for people camping, which are quite inexpensive.
Yeah.
Is there anything on a small scale which would just be used in a single room, smaller than buying a proper solar panel and car battery, which costs a lot of money?
Yeah, so here, what's available with the smaller solar units, they are usually a little panel with maybe 1 to 3 lights. But again, it's not affordable to many families, because such a unit would cost about 600,000 Ugandan shillings, which is about
what, 150 pounds?
About 150 pounds, yes. But then they're rubbish quality.
Oh.
So yeah, so they just break down. I think they're probably I don't know, that the quality is so poor, so they don't last long.
You're very diplomatic there, Philip. I thought you were going to say something. So I think, I think just about the nationality where it may have come from. So anyway.
Yeah, I was trying to be a little bit sensitive.
So just thank you, Alan. Just another question from Graham Miller, just really talking about, you mentioned boiling water, and Graham's asked about filters and locally made filters. What's your experience with people using filters as opposed to boiling water?
With filters, the biosand filters have been piloted by actually a number of organizations, but they did not work so well. And research has shown that they had issues with the maintenance. So when they clog up, then people are not able to remove the sand and wash it and then put it back. But then for a bigger water supply, we have tried the filters that were developed by Nigel. I don't know, Nigel is here. And that one is now filtering the water for the whole system. It's actually located just before you get into the reservoir, the main reservoir of the system. So we've had a number of water quality tests done on the water after the filter, before the filter and after the filter, and it's already zero after the filter. So they you know, the first ones that were tried, where we had a lot of, you know, putting of different bits together. So there were chances of leakages here and there, which we finally fixed. But I think they've now developed it into a modular kind of type where you can fit the bigger pieces together. So that type of filter is working very well. Household filters, they don't work very well. So that's why we encourage people to boil. But how do they boil? So it also comes in with the aspect of energy saving, because we are mainly using wood fuel. So we support them to design energy saving stoves, whereby you put in some pieces of wood and then they help to light two kind of like stoves at the same time. So you can cook your food here and then you boil the water on the other one. So a number of them, but fiddling around. But with the filters at household level, there hasn't been much success.
You may want to consider methane gas digesters, because
Yeah.
they you can use them for sanitation purposes.
Mm-hmm.
The gas that's produced is methane gas, and it's a burnable gas, and you can get really good cheap burners from China, two ring burners. But methane gas is the way to go, because it's yeah, because it doesn't use any wood. It just uses household waste, even human waste actually. And at one time you couldn't, in this country, in the UK, you couldn't use what comes out the end, because what comes out the end basically is liquid nitrogen fertilizer. And in the UK you couldn't use it because it was human waste. But actually there's the Scottish Water Board have now started selling the waste product as fertilizers for the farms in Scotland.
Yeah. So how easy is it to get the biodigesters, or can you make them locally?
You could, I mean, basically it's a couple of tank systems. You can use the torts or the IBCs. You can if you can make round water tanks like you showed in your diagram, you just need two: one to put the stuff in and one to store the gas in, and then you just run the pipe to the house.
So does it have to be airtight?
Yes, it does. It has to be airtight because it's anaerobic digestion. So it has to be airtight. But you know you can sort of bung stuff in it, and within sort of a week, it'll start producing gas. and then you just keep on topping it up.
Yeah.
20 years ago, the Uganda National Agricultural Engineering Department were doing this at their site up Bombo Road.
Mm.
They might have an update on that by now.
Yeah, I'll try and check with them.
It's also a project that we've been working with LAM Hospital in Bangladesh on developing a biogas system for helping them treat a lot of human waste as well as food waste. And we're sort of working through that process. It's always a challenge to get it to work on either a household level or a community level. I love the idea of biogas because you get fuel out of it, but it's just something that doesn't take on. It's really hard to get take up on it. I'm just wanting to continue through the questions. At least I'm not 100% sure that your question was answered, Nigel, in talking about biogas. So I wonder if you could ask yours.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Philip, for your presentation. It was on boiling water. I was wondering if people are provided with clean water, would they continue boiling their water because that's their, if you like, they've been trained to do that, or would they cease? And then the other part of the question was whether you could comment on the impact of firewood on deforestation and the health impacts of smoke in households.
Yeah. In communities where the water has been tested, because once in a while we do the water testing, then the people actually do not boil the water. So we realize that continuing to encourage people to boil the water is actually now, depleting or causing deforestation.
Yeah.
So we had to actually now encourage, but if the water is safe, then they can actually continue to drink it. So of course, with the deforestation, and then they're using wood fuel a lot, and the issues of the smoke, they continue to affect the people because they have to cook their food. So energy saving stoves, they have some kind of a chimney which directs the smoke, but not many people have adopted them yet. So they are still being encouraged.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Phil.
Have you ever thought of using solar furnaces to boil the water?
So how would that be done?
It's basically if you look for solar furnaces on the web, basically it's a box with tin cans in, Coke cans, or baked bean tins. I mean, sort of the very, very basics. And what happens is you basically put it in a box, paint it all black, put a piece of plastic or a piece of glass across the front, and air comes in the bottom, travels through the cans in the sunshine, and out the top comes very, very hot air, basically, like 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can use it to actually boil the water by putting it through a small coil.
Can you share some designs?
Just look on the web for solar furnaces, and the Americans have got dozens of different designs. Some use baked bean tins, some use Coke cans, some use old pieces of wire mesh, all sorts of anything that is absorbent, that absorbs heat, basically.
We had a wonderful. I'm trying to remember. I'm sure it was you, Alan, who did a sort of demonstration of a solar cooker somewhere. Where was it? In London, Bermondsey or something? Was it at your church?
No, I think it was at another church. I brought it along. I've still got the small model. Yeah, that's based on the Solar Cookers International. They're an international organization based in USA, Sacramento. and they've got a lot of good stuff. I've just made a note about the indicator, which is just a thing about the size of your finger. You float it in the water in the pot, and it tips up when it's at pasteurization temperature, and that's enough for killing the bugs. It saves taking the water up to boiling. Saves a lot.
What temperature is that?
70 degrees, 70 pasteurization temperature for water.
70 degrees centigrade.
Yeah, something like that.
What's that in Fahrenheit?
Well, it's just a statistic we can all look at up.
Yeah.
I'll look it up later. Yeah.
I mean, again, a lot of these ideas, they really struggle with take up. And, you know, so with people come up with these great ideas, but the challenge, I think, is to get them adopted, you know, by communities. Things like the fuel efficient, you know, the rocket stove or the fuel efficient stove has probably had the most take up. But, you know, for me, deforestation is such a massive issue, but there's no real alternatives for people using firewood. The worst is charcoal, but firewood you know, is still, you know, so needed in communities, and there really isn't you know, a viable alternative, I don't think. So
except methane gas, because you don't have to burn anything, and virtually it's free.
Yeah, I mean, it would be good to see that adopted in some communities, but again, there's a big challenge, I think, doing that. I was going to I've got a lot of messages coming up, but I was going to share just so that Philip, you can see what these IBC tanks are like. It's basically that type of you know, container, which that Eric was talking about, which I don't, you know, they might be available to some extent in the cities, but not so much obviously in rural areas.
But when you weigh the cost, if you can get them, against building a 4,000 litre tank that's in plastic and costing 120 quid for 4, as against building a huge great big tank and using concrete and sand and cement, that must be a lot more expensive.
Yeah, I think it's access to them. But Phil, what's your experience, Philip, seeing that?
Beg your pardon?
When that type of tank isn't readily available?
Yeah, I've seen it only in Kampala, and they're mainly used, I think, on construction sites. So I think it would help if we found out the cost, so that that would help us know they're actually affordable to the communities. Yeah, the cost versus the size.
Yeah.
And then comparing them with the plastic tanks, the HDPE tanks.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going through. There's Graham sent something about a Griffade filter. I'm just going to keep going through the questions, and then we can come back to that if need be. Solar lights in Uganda, sold by Sunny Money. Have you got one there, Paul? Something from Sunny Money. Oh, is that what you're showing? Is that the light? So is that a single light? With, oh, and that's just on the back? The panel's just on the back?
Microphone is off, I think.
I think he's going to turn it on. He's just working on that technology.
Amazing.
I think he's communicating with signals.
Flags.
One question from, I think it's from Roger. Where did I see that? what CED project do you think has been the most successful? The most successful one? I think that. Sorry, I think you've answered that. But do you want to say which one you think has been the most successful that CED have done?
Yeah, well, I think all the valley tanks have been very successful, and the water and the gravity water supply systems. So I think I would say they've been very successful. And like I said, it's probably due to the level of expertise that is put into the design. They usually take probably about a year to develop the design. It goes through different CED members. You know, they share it around, people have a lot of input into it. So I think that's probably why they've been very successful.
My question, Philip, was, would you say one type of project was more successful than another? Would you think, if you had an option that we could do one project, would it be a valley tank? Would it be a gravity system? Would it be rainwater harvesting? I wanted to get a feel for what was the most successful in your opinion.
I would say the valley tank.
Valley tank. Okay.
Yeah, because it really, when you look at the need that it covers, it's really great. And the number of people that benefit from it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I think I just wanted to share just something going back to what you said, Philip, about life expectancy and infant mortality. It's just I just thought I'd share a couple of very brief slides, and just this is really for everyone's encouragement while people think up. If I haven't asked final questions, think up your final question. But I'll just share this because I was quite surprised, I suppose, at the low levels of infant mortality, and this shows the change in infant mortality from 1950. Where it's over 150 deaths. Children die before their, I think this is 5th birthday, but it's now down here about 35. And that feels like an incredible change over the last 60 years. And the next one shows the change in I haven't changed the title. Oops, sorry. That should say life expectancy at the top, but down back in 1950, 38. Today, at 63, as you say. So I just wanted to share that because I get some people who say to me, "Aid, it's just a sticking plaster and it doesn't make any difference." And, you know, my view is that isn't just a sticking plaster. You see the change from 38, a life expectancy of 38 to 63 in as many in 60 years, which is a phenomenal change, really. So do you have any perspective on that?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, most of this support that comes in form of, for example, improving the lives of the people through improved nutrition, through provision of safe water and sanitation, because most diseases actually that were killing people were water and sanitation related. So when you come in and provide a safe water supply, then you actually eradicate all those diseases within that community. So I think, again, that has been one of the areas that have been very successful.
Yeah, I just, when you shared those figures, I thought those are actually you know, those have shown a big improvement just in the time that I've been interested in what's been happening in Uganda. Does anyone have a final question? I'm aware that we have probably 5 minutes before I want to release Philip.
Where is Philip at the moment? Is he in Uganda?
Yes.
Yeah, in Uganda, in the southwest, in Kabale.
Would you say that's God's own country, Philip?
Yeah, the Switzerland of Africa. Yeah.
So, any last questions?
Now, I just wanted to comment that unfortunately Kabale is too cloudy for solar power.
So many clouds, and yeah, it's not so friendly, isn't it?
And it's a bit cold.
Yeah.
Could CED help with transport of goods from farms to market?
It's a good one. I don't know what the members think, but when you look at the road network, sometimes it's really terrible. So people carry all the stuff on their heads. So I don't know, Mike, Nigel, and the Paul. I don't know what you'd say about that.
I mean, I had a sort of question really thinking about health and safety, because we talked when we were making the video about carrying blocks up a hillside to where a tank was being constructed, but also we saw a lady breaking stone, and there are a lot of things. We've talked about excavations and people going down into trenches and all these things. We have our sort of health and safety mindset from the UK, and we kind of, it hurts us really to look at people doing what seems to be normal in Uganda, and we struggle to think, how can we sort of bring what we think are the right things to do and help the people in Uganda. But I think that may be something for next seasons of CED, next year's season of CED talks, rather than the last few minutes, unless you have any thoughts on it, Philip.
Yeah, not really.
That can be our challenge for the summer, is to think of how we can apply, in a practical way, our best practice. Sorry, carry on, Philip. Were you just going to agree with us?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's the challenge that we probably need to think through together and see how best we can address it.
Okay, well, I'm going to allow you to go and rest now, Philip. I wonder whether your energy levels are getting lower. Certainly ours are.
I had a cup of tea here.
But what I want to say is thank you so much, Philip, for sharing tonight. Thank you for taking the time to prepare the presentation and to spend that time with me uploading it and preparing it beforehand. Thank you to everyone else who's contributed tonight. If you're not a member or a supporter of CED and you'd like to have a link to this, I'm going to copy the chat as well and make that available. If you'd like to be sent a link of that, Rob is being very good about sending these round. Just let me have your email address through the chat. The talk should be available, God willing, on CED's website tomorrow and also on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel. And now I'm going to, no, I'm not going to stop recording yet. Finally, a reminder that our last Tech Talk of this winter season of Tech Talks is going to be on Monday, the 8th of March, and that will be Jonathan Appleby, our chair, will be speaking about engineering in disasters. So thank you, everyone, and a very good night to everyone. I'm going to stop recording now, hopefully, if I can get my mouse.